My friend's boyfriend stole her innocence, then my other best friend laughed with him on FaceTime about how she was being so dramatic and just trying to get attention. When I confronted her about selling us out, she smiled through her tears and said, Derek promised to marry me if I helped him. I didn't say a word. That was 8 months ago. This morning, she was outside my apartment begging me to testify for her. My girls and I were having our monthly sleepover at Jenna's place. Face masks on, rosé flowing, and Love Island playing. But the best part was Mia was finally laughing for the first time since Derek stole her innocence. I was grabbing my phone charger from Jenna's room when I heard giggling in the closet. Ashley, on FaceTime, with Derek. My whole body went cold. She's being so dramatic about the whole thing, Ashley was saying. Like, okay, maybe you were a little forceful, but calling it what she's calling it? She's just trying to get attention. I fumbled for my phone. Hit record. I miss you, Derek said. I'll see you soon, my love. I backed out, hands shaking, texted the group chat minus Ashley and Mia. Bathroom, now, emergency. When I showed them the video, Kendra literally had to be held back. That freaking— Wait, shut the F up, Priya interrupted, scrolling frantically. Look at this. Derek's mom's Instagram. Some massive charity gala for their foundation. 3 weeks away. Black tie. All of high society. He thinks he's untouchable, Tiana said. We all looked at each other. The same idea hitting us. Mia's going on a spa weekend, I said. Jenna, Kendra, you take her. The rest of us, say less. The next 2 weeks were insane. First, research. The Harrison family? Conservative didn't even cover it. Their foundation was all about traditional values and proper young ladies. Every photo from their events showed women in floor-length gowns that covered everything. So naturally, we went shopping for the opposite. How about this? Carmen held up the trampiest red dress I'd ever seen. Cutouts everywhere. Basically held together by hope. Perfect. We cleared out that store. Tiana found this silver sequined thing with a slit up to her hip. Mine was black, backless, and definitely not grandmother approved. The heels were 6 inches minimum. I literally cannot walk in these. Priya laughed, wobbling. Practice, babe. We have 2 weeks. We stalked Derek's entire social media. Memorized his friends, his schedule, everything. We decided on pretending to be his study group friends. The ones from his wild phase. The night of, we got ready together. The energy was insane. Everyone looked absolutely lethal. Remember, Tiana said, adjusting her tits in the dress, we're his fun friends from school. 2 Ubers to the Fairmont. The valet's jaw literally dropped. Walking into that ballroom was a scene. Every single head turned. We're here for Derek Harrison, I told security, loud as hell. He said to just come find him. Security looked confused, but waved us through. The ballroom was exactly what you'd expect. Chandeliers, string quartet, women in modest gowns clutching pearls, and then us. Oh my gosh, there he is! Carmen squealed. Derek was with his parents and Ashley, who was wearing this conservative navy thing. His face when he saw us, I wish I'd filmed it. We click-clacked across that floor like we owned it. Derek! Tiana yelled. Baby, you didn't tell us it was this fancy. His mom's mouth fell open. His dad went red. Ashley looked like she might faint. I'm sorry, who are you? His mother asked, voice like ice. We're Derek's friends from school. I threw my arm around him. He was stiff as a board. Right, Dee? I don't. Don't be shy, Priya laughed. Remember that night at Sigma Chai? When you were showing everyone those pictures? Carmen added. The ones of that girl? What was her name? Started with an M. His dad stepped forward. I think there's been a mistake. No mistake, Tiana said sweetly. Derek invited us. Said you'd love to meet the girls he parties with. More family members were gathering. His grandmother, his sisters, all staring. Derek's always talking about y'all, I said to his mom, especially when he's drunk. Gets so emotional. Remember when he was crying about that girl? Carmen asked. Said he felt so bad, but daddy would fix it? Ashley tried pulling Derek away, but Priya blocked her. Oh, you must be the new girlfriend. Did he tell you about us? The crowd was growing. Rich people love drama. Derek finally spoke. I don't know these people. You don't know us? Tiana pulled out her phone. That's weird because I have so many texts. Security started moving, but his grandmother held up her hand. Let them speak. His dad grabbed Derek's arm. We're leaving. Now. But the damage was done. The whispers started immediately. Then the best part. This older woman, dripping in diamonds, walked over. That boy hurt someone? We nodded. How bad? Hospital bad. Derek lost everything that night. Not his freedom. Daddy's money handled that. But his reputation, his family's respect, gone. When we finally told Mia, she just sat there, then started crying. We didn't hear from her much after that, and I figured she was just taking time to process. But a month later, she broke the silence to tell us the news. It came in the form of 2 pink lines on a pregnancy stick. Our hearts dropped. I kept staring at my phone screen even though the image was burned into my brain already. The pregnancy test with 2 pink lines and just Derek's name typed underneath made my stomach turn. My fingers moved on their own typing back, asking if she wanted company, but her response came quick, saying she needed space to think. The group chat was going crazy with everyone typing at once except Ashley, who hadn't said anything since the gala 3 weeks ago. Kendra was already sending links to clinics in Boston, while Priya was Googling Massachusetts laws about pregnancy and assault cases. Tiana kept typing these long messages, then deleting them before sending anything. 3 days passed, and I couldn't stop myself from driving to Mia's apartment complex on Commonwealth Avenue. I circled the block 3 times before finally parking and walking up to her building. Her Honda hadn't moved from its spot, and all her blinds were pulled down tight. I left 2 bags of groceries at her door with a sticky note saying we were here whenever she was ready. Ashley finally showed up in the group chat 4 days later, claiming she had no idea Derek was capable of something like that. She said she broke up with him right after the gala and was taking time to process everything. Kendra wasn't buying it and posted a screenshot from Ashley's Instagram story from yesterday where you could clearly see the Tiffany necklace Derek gave her still around her neck. The chat went dead silent after that. 2 weeks after the pregnancy news, Jenna called an emergency meeting at her place, but told me not to invite Ashley or Mia. We all sat in her living room where this whole thing started, but without Mia there laughing, it felt wrong and empty. Priya pulled up Derek's Instagram on her laptop, showing him at lacrosse practice yesterday, smiling like nothing happened. His stories showed him at parties and hanging with his frat brothers like his life was completely normal. Several days later, my phone buzzed with Mia's name and she asked if I could drive her somewhere. When I pulled up to her building, she was already waiting outside wearing this huge BU hoodie even though it was 70 degrees out. She climbed into my car and gave me an address for a medical building in Brookline. The whole ride there, she didn't say anything except when we got to the office and the nurse asked how far along she was. 8 weeks, she said in this flat voice I'd never heard from her before. The doctor was this older woman who was really gentle as she confirmed the pregnancy and started explaining all the options. She talked about continuing the pregnancy and adoption and termination, while I held Mia's hand, which was ice cold and shaking. The doctor gave her a folder full of pamphlets and said she had time to make a decision, but not to wait too long if she wanted certain options. That evening, we sat in my car in the parking garage and Mia completely broke down, sobbing harder than I'd ever seen anyone cry. Between gasps, she told me that Derek's family lawyers had contacted her parents with an offer for her silence. Her parents, who went to church every Sunday and had her promise to save herself for marriage, now knew everything and wanted her to keep the baby and take the money. 3 days later, I basically moved into Mia's apartment because she wasn't eating unless I physically put food in front of her. She sat on her couch staring at this stack of legal papers the Harrison family lawyers had sent over. $500,000 for complete silence plus medical expenses and help relocating anywhere she wanted as long as she never said Derek's name publicly again. The NDA was 40 pages long and basically meant she could never tell anyone what happened ever again. Meanwhile, Kendra had been doing her own digging through some people she knew from her pre-law program at Northeastern. She found out 3 other girls from colleges around Boston had filed complaints against Derek that all got dropped suddenly. Each girl ended up transferring schools with these random scholarships from the Harrison Foundation that nobody had ever heard of before. 2 nights later, Ashley showed up at my dorm room around midnight with mascara running down her face and her hands shaking so bad she could barely hold her phone. She pushed past me into my room and sat on my bed crying about how Derek was threatening her and making her stay quiet about everything. I grabbed my laptop and opened QuickTime to record while pretending to check emails as she talked about being scared and trapped. She kept going on about how he controlled everything, and then she said something that made my blood freeze. She mentioned how hard it must be for Mia with the pregnancy and morning sickness, but we hadn't told anyone about the pregnancy yet. I kept my face neutral and asked how she knew, and she tried to backtrack saying she just assumed, but the damage was done. After she left, I saved the recording to 3 different places and texted the group minus Ashley about what just happened. 3 weeks later at 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Mia saying she needed me right now. I'm really curious about how Ashley knew about the pregnancy when nobody told her. Did Derek somehow find out and tell her? The way she tried to cover it up makes me wonder if she's been talking to him this whole time while pretending to be on their side. I threw on sweats and drove to her apartment, where I found her sitting on the bathroom floor with a pregnancy test in her hand. She looked up at me and said she was keeping it because something beautiful should come from something horrible. We sat on her bedroom floor eating Ben & Jerry's and looking at adoption websites on her laptop until the sun came up. The next day, the group rallied hard around Mia's decision, with Jenna making a color-coded schedule for doctor appointments and Kendra researching the best OBGYNs in Boston and Priya setting up a meal train. Everyone helped except Ashley, who was posting Instagram stories from Derek's family's house on Cape Cod with captions about summer vibes and blessed. Tiana screenshotted everything and started building a timeline in a Google Doc showing exactly when Ashley was with Derek versus when she claimed to be scared of him. 2 weeks after that, I was walking to my car after my evening class when Derek appeared with 2 of his lacrosse buddies blocking my path to the parking garage. He got right in my face saying Mia better sign those papers or things would get complicated for all of us. I managed to slip my phone into my pocket and hit record just before he grabbed my arm hard enough that I knew it would bruise. His friends stood there watching as he told me his dad had connections everywhere and we had no idea who we were messing with. The next morning, I went to campus police to file a report, and the officer seemed bored until I mentioned Derek's last name, and suddenly he was very concerned about false accusations and ruining a young man's future. He kept asking if maybe I misunderstood or if I'd been drinking, and when I showed him the bruises on my arm, he said that could have happened anywhere. I left without signing anything and called my mom's lawyer friend, who told me to document everything and take photos of the bruises every day as they changed color. 5 days later, Jenna's older sister, who worked as a social worker, connected us with a pregnancy support group that wasn't religious or political, just women helping women. Mia agreed to go to one meeting, and I went with her, sitting in the back of a community center while she listened to other women share their stories. Her hand gripped mine so tight when one woman talked about choosing adoption and how it was the hardest and best decision she ever made. That same week, Priya asked to borrow Ashley's laptop for a statistics assignment, and while Ashley was in the shower, Priya found the recently deleted folder. Screenshots of our group chat, photos of Mia's appointment cards, my class schedule, even conversations about the pregnancy that Ashley had forwarded to Derek with notes about what we were planning. Priya airdropped everything to her phone, and we called an emergency meeting at Jenna's apartment. When we confronted Ashley, she broke down sobbing about how Derek promised to marry her after graduation if she helped him manage the situation. She pulled up her sleeves to show bruises on her arms, saying he hurt her too, and she was just as much a victim. Kendra stood up and said that was bullshit because the bruises were in weird places that didn't match someone grabbing you, and Ashley's story kept changing every time she told it. Things got worse when Mia's morning sickness hit hard, and I started skipping my morning classes to stay with her. I held her hair back while she threw up and brought her ginger ginger tea and saltines, and we'd sit on her bathroom floor while she made dark jokes about how Derek's baby was already making her suffer. We both cried a lot during those days. Then exactly 1 week later, Derek's mother showed up at Mia's apartment in a black town car, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Mia's rent for a year. She sat on Mia's secondhand couch with her designer purse in her lap and pulled out a folder with a new offer of $750,000 plus a house in another state if Mia signed the papers, and disappeared. She kept saying how girls like Mia should be grateful for such generosity and how this was more money than Mia would see in a lifetime. I was hiding in the bedroom with my phone recording through the cracked door as she explained that this offer wouldn't last forever, and smart girls knew when to take a good deal. The lawyer finally left after 45 minutes of this garbage, and Mia just sat there staring at the check on the coffee table while I came out of the bedroom with my phone still recording everything. She picked it up with shaking hands, and I thought she might actually sign it, but instead she tore it into tiny pieces and threw them in the trash. That's when Tiana texted saying her cousin who works in IT could help us organize all our evidence properly, so we drove to his apartment that same night. He set up this whole encrypted cloud system and spent hours showing us how to upload everything with timestamps and backup copies, while explaining something about chain of custody for court cases. We stayed up until 4 in the morning transferring every recording, screenshot, text message, and document we had, while he created folders labeled by date and type of evidence. The next week, Mia started going to this pregnancy support group at the hospital, and the leader, Sandra, kept watching her during the meetings like she recognized something familiar. After the third meeting, Sandra pulled Mia aside and gave her a business card with her personal cell number written on the back, saying she'd worked with cases involving wealthy families before. 3 days later, Ashley started blowing up my phone with texts begging me to meet her alone because she had information about Derek that could help Mia. I didn't trust her at all, but agreed to meet at a Starbucks downtown and brought Priya as backup, who sat 2 tables away pretending to study. Ashley looked terrible with dark circles under her eyes and kept checking her phone every few seconds before finally admitting Derek had done this before at his prep school. She said his parents paid off a girl's family and got her to transfer schools senior year after something happened at a party, but she didn't know all the details. That night, Priya and I spent hours searching online for any girl who transferred from Derek's prep school during his time there, and finally found someone named Emma, who left suddenly during what would have been Derek's junior year. Priya sent her a message on Instagram explaining we were trying to help someone Derek hurt and asking if she could talk, but Emma read it immediately and blocked us without responding. 4 days passed before Mia's first ultrasound appointment, and I went with her to the clinic downtown where they did the scan. The second that heartbeat sound filled the room, Mia completely broke down sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe while the tech quietly left to give us privacy. She kept saying she couldn't hate something so innocent, even though it came from something so violent, and I just held her while she cried for 20 minutes straight. The following week, we went back for another appointment, but when we walked into the waiting room, Derek was already there arguing with the receptionist about his rights as the father. Security had to physically drag him out while he screamed about getting a court order, and Mia had such a bad panic attack in the parking lot that we had to call an ambulance. Sandra from the support group came to visit Mia in the hospital, and that's when she mentioned she was actually a retired attorney who now helps assault survivors pro bono. She looked over the Harrison family's offer that we'd saved and immediately started pointing out illegal clauses and coercive language that could get them in serious trouble. After that scare, I packed a bag and moved into Mia's apartment because she was too scared to be alone anymore. We fell into this weird routine of making tea every morning, taking her prenatal vitamins together, and walking to campus side by side like bodyguards. Everything felt like we were just waiting for something terrible to happen and trying to pretend life was normal when it absolutely wasn't. Meanwhile, Kendra had been pretending to forgive Ashley and invited her for coffee to supposedly make up and talk things through. While Ashley was in the bathroom, Kendra grabbed her phone and found a recording app with dozens of files including conversations from our group hangouts. She took photos of the app and the file names but left everything exactly as she found it so Ashley wouldn't know we knew about the recordings. 2 weeks later, Mia's parents showed up at her apartment without warning after the Harrison lawyers contacted them again with a new offer. Her dad spent an hour lecturing about forgiveness and keeping the baby because abortion was a sin, while her mom kept whispering about what people at their church would think. Mia finally told them to leave, and when they wouldn't go, she threatened to call the police, which made her dad turn red and storm out, dragging her mom behind him. That night, after everyone else went home, Mia finally broke down and told me everything about what Derek did to her. She sat on her couch with her knees pulled up to her chest, and her voice was so quiet I had to lean in close to hear her. She said Derek had been so nice at first, buying her flowers and taking her to fancy restaurants and making her feel special. Then he invited her to his apartment to watch a movie, and she thought it would be fine since they'd been dating for 3 weeks. But once they were alone, he started getting pushy, and when she said no, he got mad and held her down. She kept saying no over and over, but he was too strong and she couldn't get away from him. I held her while she shook and cried, and I finally understood how bad it really was. 5 days later, Priya called me freaking out because some girl named Emma from Derek's old prep school had messaged her on Instagram. Emma was scared to put anything in writing, so we drove 3 hours to meet her at this little diner near her college. Wow, the way Emma finally reached out after blocking them at first makes me wonder what changed her mind. Maybe she's been carrying this burden alone for years? She looked around the whole time like someone might be watching, and her hands shook when she picked up her coffee cup. Emma told us Derek did the same thing to her when she was 16 at a party at his parents' house. She went to the hospital after and had a rape kit done, but Derek's family paid her parents $200,000 to keep quiet. The check cleared, and suddenly Emma was transferring schools and signing papers saying she wouldn't talk about it. Emma gave us the number for another girl named Sophia, who also left Derek's prep prep school really suddenly sophomore year. She warned us that the Harrison family had connections everywhere, including judges and police commissioners and university boards. We weren't just fighting Derek anymore, but his whole family's power and money. By week 9, Mia was starting to show a little bump when she stood sideways in front of the mirror. She'd put her hand on her stomach and just stare at herself with this blank look on her face. She decided she wanted to give the baby up for adoption, but hadn't told her parents yet because she knew they'd freak out. I helped her look up agencies that worked with assault survivors, and we found one that let you pick the family yourself. Then at 2 in the morning, Ashley called me crying so hard I could barely understand her. Derek found out she'd been talking to us about the prep school girls, and now he was threatening to send her nudes to everyone. She was finally scared enough to think about helping us for real instead of protecting him. 3 days later, Sandra filed for a restraining order against Derek for Mia saying he'd been harassing and stalking her. The judge granted it right away, which surprised everyone until Sandra told us later she'd clerked for that judge years ago. It was our first real win, and we actually celebrated with champagne at Sandra's office. The friend group threw Mia this little party at Jenna's place, calling it a strength party instead of a baby shower. Even Ashley showed up looking tired with a bruise on her arm she kept trying to hide with her sleeve. We painted our nails and watched trashy TV and pretended everything was normal for one night, but Derek couldn't leave things alone, and by week 10 his frat brothers were leaving notes on Mia's car saying she was a liar and worse things. Campus security said they couldn't prove Derek told them to do it even though everyone knew he did. Sandra took pictures of every note and saved them all in a file for the harassment case she was building. Sophia agreed to talk to us on an encrypted video call because she was too scared to meet in person. She told us Derek had this whole pattern where he'd find girls without strong families and love bomb them with attention and gifts. Then once he got them alone somewhere, he'd assault them, and afterwards act like nothing happened. She showed us photos of bruises on her arms and pages from her diary where she'd written down dates and what he did. 4 days later, I went with Mia to her counseling session where she was working through her decision about adoption. The therapist helped her write a letter to the baby explaining why she was choosing adoption and how it was because she loved them. Mia folded up the letter and gave it to me, asking me to keep it safe until the baby was old enough to understand. I put the letter in my desk drawer with all our other important papers when my phone started blowing up with texts from my dad. The Harrison family lawyers had sent cease and desist letters to my parents' house and to Jenna's and Kendra's families too. My dad was freaking out because he runs a small contracting business and can't afford any legal problems. He kept calling and begging me to drop this whole thing before we got sued. My mom was crying in the background saying we were going to lose the house. Jenna's parents were threatening to pull her out of school if she didn't stop. Kendra's mom drove 3 hours just to yell at her in person. We were all sitting in my dorm room trying to figure out what to do when Ashley showed up at my door. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She handed me her phone and just stood there shaking. On it were voice recordings from when Derek got drunk at his apartment. You could hear him laughing about what he did to Mia. He was bragging to his friends about how she tried to push him off, but he was stronger. He said she was asking for it by coming to his room. There were also texts where he told Ashley his dad would handle everything if Mia tried to report it. Ashley had been recording him for weeks without him knowing. She also had screenshots of him planning to get other girls drunk at parties. 3 days later, Mia had to meet with the adoptive parents the agency found. They were this nice couple from the suburbs who had been trying to have kids for 8 years. The woman started crying when Mia explained why she was giving up the baby. They promised to send pictures every month and let Mia write letters when the baby got older. They even said they'd tell the child the truth when they were ready. Mia seemed relieved to find good people who understood. The next week, things got scary when Derek's frat brothers cornered Tiana and Priya in the library. They blocked them between the book stacks and started saying stuff about campus not being safe for girls who spread lies. One of them grabbed Priya's backpack and dumped it out. But Priya was smart and had already started live streaming on Instagram when she saw them coming. The whole thing went viral in like an hour with everyone sharing it. People were commenting that they recognized the guys from Sigma. Campus security finally showed up but said they couldn't do anything since no one got hurt. Sandra called us the next day and brought another lawyer who specialized in going after rich families. She said we had enough evidence for a civil case, but getting criminal charges would be harder. The DA's office didn't like prosecuting wealthy kids because their families had connections. She suggested we start a media campaign to put pressure on them. She had contacts at local news stations who might be interested. Meanwhile, Mia was finally feeling better since her second trimester started. The morning sickness stopped and she had more energy. We went shopping for maternity clothes at Target, and she actually laughed when she couldn't button any jeans. It was the first time I'd seen her happy in months. She got these stretchy pants and some bigger shirts. We even looked at baby stuff just to see what the adoptive parents might need. 5 days later, I came back from class to find my dorm room door open and my stuff everywhere. Someone had broken in and taken my laptop with all our evidence files on it. My roommate said she saw 2 guys leaving but didn't recognize them. Campus police came and took a report but basically said there was nothing they could do. Thank God I had backed everything up to the cloud the night before. After the library video went viral, other girls started messaging us about Derek. One girl said he grabbed her at a party and wouldn't let go until her boyfriend showed up. Another said her drink tasted weird after he handed it to her, and she had to leave. 3 girls from his high school reached out saying he did the same stuff back then. We started documenting everything in a spreadsheet with dates and names. Ashley finally moved back home with her parents the next week. Before she left, she gave me a flash drive with every text, photo, and recording from her whole relationship with Derek. She had saved everything, including photos of them together and messages where he talked about other girls. Her last text just said to make him pay for what he did. Then the university administration tried to threaten Mia with academic suspension for missing too many classes. They said her absences were excessive, even though she had doctor's notes for everything. It was obvious the Harrison family was pulling strings. Sandra immediately immediately threatened them with ADA violation lawsuits and discrimination claims. The suspension threat disappeared within 24 hours, but we knew they'd keep trying other stuff. A week later, my phone rang while I was in the library, and the caller ID said, The Globe, which made my heart skip because that's our city's biggest newspaper. The woman on the other end said her name was Rachel, and she'd been digging into the Harrison family's foundation for months looking at tax stuff and heard about our viral video from the gala. She wanted to meet us at this coffee shop near campus, and when I told the group chat, everyone got nervous, but we decided to go anyway. Rachel showed up with folders full of documents and spreadsheets showing how the foundation moved money around to hide stuff, and she said she needed someone to go on record about what Derek did to connect it all. We sat there for 3 hours going through everything, and she took notes on her laptop while recording us, and by the end she had this look in her eyes like she'd just found gold. 2 days later, we were all studying in Jenna's apartment when Mia suddenly went completely still with her hand pressed against her stomach, and tears started rolling down her face. She whispered that she felt it move, and we all just sat there not knowing what to say, because this baby was real now and growing inside her from the worst thing that ever happened to her. The next morning, I was walking out of the student union when Derek's father appeared out of nowhere and blocked my path, and I could smell his expensive cologne mixed with cigarettes. He said he knew where my little sister went to high school, and which bus she took home, and that accidents happen all the time to young girls who aren't careful. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to hit record in my pocket while he kept talking about how his family had connections everywhere and could make our lives very difficult. The way Derek bragged to his friends about overpowering Mia, while Ashley secretly recorded everything, makes me wonder how many times he's done this before without anyone catching him. Those voice recordings must have taken incredible courage for Ashley to make. The security cameras in that exact spot just happened to be broken that day, which seemed way too convenient, but I had the audio on my phone at least. Sandra filed for an emergency protective order 4 days later, and the judge's face got darker and darker as she read through all the evidence we'd collected, including my recording of his threats. Derek's family sent 3 lawyers to argue about First Amendment rights and how we were harassing them, but the judge wasn't having any of it and granted the order for our whole friend group. That weekend, the adoptive parents Mia had chosen invited her to dinner at their house, and we drove 40 minutes to this nice suburb where they had a yellow house with a swing set already in the backyard. They showed her the nursery they were setting up with soft green walls and little elephant decorations and told her about their 5 years of trying to have a baby before their doctor said it wouldn't happen naturally. Mia asked if they'd tell the child that she loved them enough to give them a better life, and they both started crying and promised they would tell that story every single day. The Boston Globe published their article the next Tuesday, and within hours it was everywhere online with the headline about patterns of assault and cover-ups at an elite university. The Harrison family stock dropped 3% in 1 day, and Derek's lacrosse team suspended him while they investigated, and suddenly everyone on campus was talking about it. My inbox started filling up with messages from girls I'd never met saying they knew other girls with Derek stories, and by the end of the week we had 5 survivors from his prep school days. They all had the same story about being isolated at parties and waking up confused, and their families getting big checks to transfer schools and sign papers promising not to talk. Sandra said this could become a class action lawsuit and started setting up meetings with each girl to document everything properly. 5 days later, Mia had one of her worst nights yet, sobbing in my bathroom about how her body didn't belong to her anymore because first Derek took it, and now this baby was using it. I ran her a bath with the lavender stuff she likes and sat outside the door scrolling through Twitter finding the funniest tweets I could to read out loud until I finally heard her laugh a little. Derek posted a response video the next day claiming he was the victim of jealous girls who regretted normal hookups and wanted attention, and his frat brothers shared it everywhere. The comment section turned into a war zone with people posting screenshots of the Globe article and others defending him saying innocent until proven guilty and attacking anyone who questioned him. The DA's office finally called 2 days later saying they were opening a criminal investigation after all the public pressure and asked Mia to come in for a formal interview. The detective was this older guy with a notebook who made her describe every single detail while I held her hand so tight I left marks, and she had to stop 4 times to breathe through panic attacks. She threw up in the parking lot afterward, and we sat in my car for an hour before she felt okay enough to go home. That night, Ashley remembered 2 other girls from Derek's past, and we tracked them down through Instagram. Emma Chen from his high school answered right away and said she'd been waiting 3 years for someone to believe her. Sophia Martinez from freshman year cried when we told her about Mia and said the same thing happened to her, but her parents made her stay quiet because of Derek's family connections. We made a group chat called Survivors and started texting every day. Emma shared the therapist who finally helped her stop having nightmares, and Sophia sent links to support groups none of us knew existed. They traded dark jokes about Derek that only they could make without it being wrong. Mia started typing more in the chat and even sent a meme about bad therapy advice that made everyone laugh for the first time in weeks. A week later, everything went to hell when someone posted Mia's medical records on the campus gossip Instagram account Boston Uni T. The post didn't show her name but had enough details like her age and the date of the assault that everyone figured it out immediately. Her phone started blowing up with messages calling her a slut and saying she was trying to trap Derek for money. Someone made a fake GoFundMe pretending to be her asking for abortion money and shared it everywhere. The university finally did something after the leak made local news and opened a Title IX investigation. Derek got banned from campus while they investigated, and his fraternity brothers lost their minds about it. They organized a protest outside the administration building with signs about false accusations ruining innocent men's lives. The frat president gave an interview to the student paper saying Derek was being lynched without evidence. Meanwhile, Mia was 17 17 weeks pregnant at her anatomy scan when the baby started hiccuping on the ultrasound screen. The technician smiled and asked if she wanted to know if it was a boy or girl, but Mia shook her head. She asked them to write it in an envelope for the adoptive parents she'd chosen through the agency. The couple seemed nice enough and had been trying for 8 years to have a baby. Ashley went to the Title I hearing with all her recordings from that night at the gala and the video from the closet. Derek's lawyer tried to make her look jealous and obsessed, but the committee members kept asking about the actual recording where Derek basically confessed. They played it 3 times, and Derek's face went white each time his voice filled the room, talking about how his dad would fix everything. 4 days later, the adoptive parents started coming to Mia's appointments and watched the ultrasounds with tears running down their faces. They heard the heartbeat, and the wife grabbed her husband's hand so tight her knuckles went white. Mia watched them with this sad smile and told them about the vitamins she was taking and how the baby kicked most at night. The husband kept saying thank you over and over until his wife made him stop because it was making Mia uncomfortable. Week 18, I spent 6 hours at Mia's apartment helping her write her victim impact statement for the criminal case. She'd write a sentence, then stop to breathe through the panic or scream into a pillow. We went through an entire box of tissues and 2 bottles of wine for me since she couldn't drink. She insisted on including every single detail even when her hands shook so bad she couldn't type, and I had to take over while she dictated. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning right in front of the student union. Campus police showed up with real Boston cops and found Derek eating breakfast with his frat brothers. They announced he was under arrest for 3 counts of sexual assault since Emma and Sophia had agreed to testify. Derek jumped up yelling about his rights and his innocence while they cuffed him. Someone filmed the whole thing on their phone and it went viral within an hour with 20,000 views. His face was all over Twitter and TikTok with people commenting about karma and rich boys finally facing consequences. 3 days later, his family hired the best crisis management firm in Boston and started their campaign. They released statements about rushing to judgment and the danger of believing accusations without proof. They got opinion pieces in conservative blogs about young men being destroyed by revenge accusations. His mom went on a podcast crying about her son's bright future being ruined by lies and said the girls were being coached by activists. The PR firm started planting stories about Derek's charity work and his academic achievements like that mattered. By this point, Mia's bump was obvious and she couldn't hide it anymore even with baggy sweaters. She stopped going to campus completely and switched to online classes for the rest of the semester. We turned her living room into a study space with a desk and good lighting so she could attend Zoom lectures without leaving the apartment. Jenna brought over a white noise machine because Mia said the silence was too loud when she tried to focus on homework. The weeks crawled by and suddenly we were at week 19 with the bail hearing finally happening. I set up my laptop on Mia's coffee table so we could watch the live stream together while she sat on the couch with a pillow pressed against her growing stomach. Derek showed up in this expensive navy suit that made him look like some prep school kid instead of what he really was. His lawyers had clearly coached him to look young and innocent with his hair all neat and this sad expression on his face. The judge barely looked at the evidence before setting bail at $500,000, which his family paid before we even finished watching. Mia didn't say anything, but her knuckles went white from gripping the pillow so hard. Sandra filed a civil suit the next day against Derek and his whole family for emotional distress and medical expenses, and included all the evidence about how they'd been covering things up and trying to intimidate witnesses. The Harrisons immediately countersued for defamation, which was exactly what Sandra expected them to do. 5 days later, a package arrived at Mia's door from the other survivors Derek had hurt over the years. Inside was this care package with soft blankets and tea and chocolate and letters from each of them telling her she wasn't alone. The most beautiful thing was a silver necklace with 5 tiny stars on it, representing each of them standing with her. She wore it to every doctor appointment after that and would touch it whenever things got hard. Then Derek violated his bail conditions in the worst way possible. Someone left flowers at Mia's door with a note that said, "For our baby," in his handwriting. The pattern with Derek's family paying bail so fast, and then him breaking the rules by sending flowers, really makes me wonder if they've done this before with his other problems. We called the cops immediately, but they said since Derek didn't personally deliver them, they couldn't prove he violated the no-contact order. Mia didn't sleep for 3 days after that, and we took turns staying with her because she kept checking the locks every hour. Week 20 brought the anatomy scan, and the adoptive parents came to the appointment looking so hopeful and nervous. The ultrasound showed a healthy baby, and the adoptive mom started crying when she saw the little face on the screen. Mia watched them with this look on her face that broke my heart because you could see she was happy, they were happy, but also mourning something that got stolen from her. The technician printed extra pictures for everyone, and Mia gave hers to the adoptive parents saying they should have them all. The DA called that afternoon to tell us the criminal trial date was set for 8 months out, which meant after Mia's due date. She explained this was actually fast for sexual assault cases, but Mia just stared at the phone realizing she'd have to testify about the worst night of her life after giving birth. The timing felt deliberately cruel, like the system was designed to break victims down. A week later, the university finally finished their Title IX investigation and found Derek responsible for sexual assault. He got expelled immediately, and his fraternity revoked his membership the same day. Sandra forwarded us the emails, and we celebrated these small victories, even though they felt hollow compared to what he deserved. Mia started writing letters to the baby that night in this journal she bought specifically for that purpose. She wrote about why she was choosing adoption and who the adoptive parents were, and how they were good people who would love this child completely. She explained that the baby was made from violence but would be raised in love and safety, and that was the greatest gift she could give. Each letter got sealed in an envelope for the future, when the child might want to know where they came from. Then week 21 then brought the most disgusting move yet when Derek's family filed for grandparent rights to the baby. Sandra had to work through the night filing emergency motions to block them and arguing that you can't claim parental rights that extend from assault. The judge scheduled a hearing and Mia threw up from the stress of knowing she'd have to fight them for control of a baby she was already giving up. The local paper finally ran a series about the Harrison family's pattern of covering up Derek's behavior, including financial records showing payoffs to multiple victims over the years. The state attorney general announced an investigation into their family foundation, and suddenly their name was toxic in Boston society. 4 days later, I drove Mia to her glucose test at the hospital and watched her drink that nasty orange stuff they make pregnant women chug. She was sitting in the waiting room when the baby started moving like crazy, making her whole belly shift and jump under her shirt. She put her hand on her stomach and actually laughed for the first time in weeks. "You're gonna tire out your real parents," she whispered to her belly. The nurse watching from the desk gave her this sad smile like she understood everything. That same week, things got scary when someone threw a brick through Mia's apartment window at 2 in the morning with "liar" painted on it in red paint. Glass went everywhere and Mia was shaking so bad she couldn't even dial 911, so I had to do it while Jenna held her. The cops took pictures but said they couldn't do much without proof of who did it, even though we all knew it had to be someone from Derek's side. We packed her stuff that night and drove 3 hours to Priya's cousin's cabin outside the city where no one would find her. The place was small and surrounded by woods, and it felt like we were letting Derek win by hiding her away, but keeping her safe was more important than anything else. The adoptive parents stepped up big time and hired their own lawyer to protect their rights to the baby once it was born. They met with Mia at the cabin and promised they'd fight the Harrison family forever if they had to, because this baby deserved parents who actually wanted it. Their lawyer was this tough woman who'd handled adoptions for 20 years, and she wasn't scared of the Harrisons at all. 5 days later, I went to stay with Mia at the cabin because she shouldn't be alone out there. We spent quiet days walking in the woods with her hand always on her growing belly, and we talked about everything except the trial coming up. She taught me how to knit these tiny baby booties that she wanted to give to the adoptive parents as a gift. The yarn was soft yellow, and she worked on them every night while we watched old movies on the cabin's ancient TV. Week 23 brought more legal drama when Derek's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the whole case, claiming there wasn't enough physical evidence to prove anything happened. Sandra called us immediately and said she was filing a response with the recorded confession from Ashley's phone, plus all the witness statements from the other victims, plus the pattern evidence showing Derek had done this before. The judge scheduled a hearing for the following week that could literally end everything if she sided with Derek. The day of the hearing was insane with news trucks everywhere and survivors' rights groups holding signs outside the courthouse. We sat in that courtroom for 3 hours while the judge reviewed everything, reading through documents and listening to the recording over and over. Mia was gripping my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers. Finally, the judge looked up and said the motion to dismiss was denied and the trial would proceed as scheduled. Derek's face went white and his dad started yelling at their lawyers right there in the courtroom. 3 days later, Derek did the most disgusting thing yet by going on some podcast that basically exists to defend guys accused of assault. He sat there for an hour claiming he was a victim of cancel culture and that Mia had targeted him for his money from the beginning. He actually said the words "post-Me Too hysteria" and talked about how men can't even talk to women anymore without being accused of something. The interview got millions of views in the first day, and people were sharing it everywhere with comments supporting him. Mia saw it on her phone and had a full panic attack, throwing up and hyperventilating until we had to call the doctor. But then something amazing happened over the next week when the other survivors started doing their own interviews with real journalists who actually asked hard questions. They shared their stories on CNN and MSNBC and The Today Show, showing hospital records and therapy bills and text messages from Derek afterward. The narrative completely shifted when people saw it wasn't just Mia but a whole pattern of behavior going back years. The hashtag #BelieveSurvivors started trending with Derek's name attached, and suddenly his supporters were getting drowned out by people calling for justice. Week 24 brought what we thought might be the end when the Harrison family's lawyers called Sandra with a final settlement offer. $2 million plus all of Mia's medical expenses paid plus therapy for life, plus Derek would plead guilty to a lesser charge with no jail time. Sandra sat us down and explained that realistically this might be the best outcome because the system is broken and rich guys rarely get real consequences even when they're guilty. She said taking it would guarantee Mia got something versus going to trial where anything could happen. Mia spent 3 days going back and forth, making lists of pros and cons, calling the other survivors to ask what they thought. The adoptive parents said they'd support whatever decision she made. On the third night, she called Sandra and said no. She wanted Derek to face real consequences even if she might lose at trial because someone had to stand up to guys like him. She wanted him to have to sit in court and hear what he did to her and the others. She wanted a jury to look at the evidence and make a real decision. The other survivors immediately said they'd testify no matter what it cost them personally. They formed a group text where they encouraged each other and shared lawyer recommendations and promised to be there every single day of the trial. The empire that the Harrison family built on covering up their son's crimes was finally going to face real justice. Week 25 brought the news we'd been waiting for when Sandra called to tell us Derek had been arrested again, this time for witness tampering after the cops found out he'd paid some guy $5,000 to call Emma and threaten her family if she testified. The judge revoked his bail immediately, and Derek got dragged out of court in handcuffs while his parents sat there looking destroyed, and Mia actually cried from relief knowing he'd be locked up until trial. That same afternoon, the adoptive parents sent Mia photos of the nursery they'd been working on, and when we saw it was painted yellow with little stars on the ceiling, exactly like the survivor solidarity necklaces we'd all been wearing, crying. Mia said it felt like the universe telling her she'd picked the right family for this baby. A week later, the university held this huge press conference announcing their new sexual assault prevention program with mandatory training for all students, and they were naming it the Thompson Initiative after Mia, who watched the whole thing on her laptop from my apartment and kept wiping her eyes as the president talked about how one brave student's voice had created real change. That weekend, Mia's parents showed up at her door with flowers, and her mom just broke down crying and apologizing for not believing her at first, saying they'd support her through the trial and understood why she'd chosen adoption. And I watched from the kitchen as her mom held her while they both sobbed, and something finally healed between them. I'm trying to understand how Derek's family thought they could get grandparent rights from an assault. What made them think any judge would consider that? When week 26 came and we all went back to campus for spring semester, people definitely stared and whispered, but now it was different, like they respected us instead of judging us. And Mia started taking online classes, but came to campus twice a week for the survivor support group meetings Sandra had helped set up. The Harrison Family Foundation made headlines again when the IRS revoked their tax-exempt status after finding all kinds of financial irregularities during the investigation, and within days their major donors started pulling out, and their whole social empire began crumbling, while more survivors started reaching out to Sandra about possibly coming forward. 2 weeks later, I drove Mia to her prenatal class where the adoptive mother was teaching her breathing exercises and watching them together. This unconventional family, bound by love for a baby who would only know safety and kindness, even made the instructor tear up and call them inspiring. Week 28 found us in Mia's bedroom packing her hospital bag with tiny onesies and letters she'd written for the baby to read someday, and gifts for the adoptive parents. And she kept saying she was scared but ready, because giving birth would be her taking back control of her body after Derek tried to steal it from her. Sandra called the next day with huge news that 3 more survivors had officially joined the civil suit, and the criminal prosecutor felt so confident about conviction that Derek's lawyer was already floating plea deal ideas, which meant justice actually felt possible instead of just hopeful. Week 29 brought us all together for the first time since the gala confrontation, when we had a girls' night at my place, and Mia was showing us ultrasound photos when the baby suddenly kicked hard enough that we could see it from the outside. So she grabbed each of our hands one by one and placed them on her belly to feel this little life moving inside her, this innocent baby who would know only love instead of violence. And she looked at all of us and said those 2 words we'd been waiting months to hear. We survived. We all just held each other and cried, knowing the trial was still coming but finding strength in our friendship that nothing could break. And the baby kicked again right under my palm, like it was agreeing with its birth mom that survival was possible, that healing was real, that sometimes a group of college girls could take down an empire and protect each other and make sure no one else got hurt the way Mia did. And as we sat there in that circle with our hands on her belly, feeling new life growing despite everything Derek had tried to destroy, we knew we'd already won the only battle that really mattered. What an awesome ride this has been. Loved exploring every twist and turn with you. Can't wait to see where we go next. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.